Racist killers who got what they deserved, real sentences, real justice. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Dylann stormed roof. He didn't rush in. He waited. Dylann Roof sat quietly among churchgoers in a historic black church in Charleston, South Carolina. For 45 minutes, he listened to scripture and prayer. But behind his calm demeanor was a loaded Glock .45 and a plan months in the making. On the evening of June 17, 2015, Roof opened fire during the closing prayer at Mother Emanuel AME Church, a sacred symbol of African American resilience. He waited until the attendees had bowed their heads, then stood up, drew his weapon, and began shooting. 74 rounds were fired. He reloaded multiple times. Victims were shot at close range, some while lying on the floor. 9 people died that night, including State Senator and Reverend Clementa Pinckney. One survivor recalled Roof saying, "I'm going to leave you here to tell the story." Roof had spent 6 months preparing the massacre. He had studied the church's significance in black history, drafted racist manifestos, and selected his targets with chilling intent. Somebody had to do it, he later told FBI agents, claiming his goal was to ignite a race war. His online searches led him deep into white supremacist forums, radicalizing his worldview. He believed black Americans were taking over the country and saw violence as his solution. He was captured the next day, identified by security footage, and arrested 245 miles away after a civilian spotted his car. Inside was the same .45 caliber handgun used in the attack. During interrogation, Roof confessed without remorse, "I am guilty. We all know I'm guilty." The justice system responded decisively. In federal court, he was convicted of 33 charges including hate crimes and obstruction of religious exercise resulting in death. He became the first person in U.S. history sentenced to death for a federal hate crime. A separate state trial added 9 consecutive life sentences. At sentencing, Judge Richard Gergel declared, his crimes qualify him for the harshest penalty that a just society can impose. Roof sat emotionless, wearing a pale prison uniform, eyes fixed forward as the sentence was delivered. Roof insisted on representing himself, rejecting mental health defenses to preserve his ideological message. He feared pity more than death, unwilling to let anything soften the impact of his racist intent. Psychiatric evaluations noted signs of social anxiety, depression, and possible autism, but the court ruled him competent. Even as his appeals progressed, Roof remained unrepentant. He now awaits execution at USP Terre Haute, the federal death row in Indiana. In 2024, President Biden commuted most federal death sentences but not Roof's. The victims' families offered a complex response. Some, like Ethel Lance's daughter, said, "I forgive you." Others demanded accountability. An $88 million settlement later held the government accountable for background check lapses that allowed Roof to buy his gun. This was more than a mass shooting. It was an act of domestic terrorism driven by white supremacy. It left behind not just loss, but a reckoning. Even in a courtroom built on logic and law, hate left its fingerprints. Roof tried to start a war. What he ignited instead was a deeper national confrontation with racial violence and a reminder that justice, though slow, does not forget. Number 2. Patrick with Crusius. He circled the store first. Quiet. Deliberate. For half an hour, Patrick with Crusius moved through the Walmart in El Paso, Texas as if scouting a battlefield. On August 3, 2019, Crusius drove over 650 miles from his home in Allen to a city known for its Hispanic culture and proximity to the Mexican border. It wasn't random. It was planned. In his car sat a WASR-10 rifle, 7 magazines, and a laptop loaded with hate. That morning, he uploaded a manifesto titled The Inconvenient Truth to the image board 8chan. In it, he declared war on immigration, echoed the Great Replacement conspiracy theory, and called for a response to what he saw as a Hispanic invasion of the United States. At 10:37 a.m., Crusius returned to his vehicle, retrieved his weapon, and opened fire. First, he shot people in the parking lot. Then, inside the store, he gunned down shoppers in the checkout lanes and bank lobby. Witnesses later described scenes of horror, parents shielding children, victims falling in mid-step, shoppers crawling through blood. In total, 23 people were killed. Another 22 were wounded. The victims ranged in age from 15 to 90. Among them were Jordan and Andre Anchondo, who died protecting their infant son. Guillermo Garcia, a soccer coach, succumbed to his injuries 8 months later. The Justice Department would later label it the deadliest anti-Latino attack in modern American history. Crusius didn't flee. He drove to a nearby intersection, stepped out with his hands raised, and told officers, "I'm the shooter." In interviews, he admitted his motive, to deter Hispanic immigration through fear. He claimed he had considered targeting other locations but chose El Paso for its border identity. "I wanted to send a message," he said. His confession removed any doubt. His planning left no room for misinterpretation. In federal court, Crusius pleaded guilty to 90 charges, including 45 counts of hate crimes and 45 firearms violations. Federal prosecutors declined the death penalty, a decision made after consultations with victims' families. Instead, he received 90 consecutive life sentences. During his state trial, victims' relatives addressed him directly. "You wanted to start a war?" one father asked. "You started funerals." Another mother told him, "I hope you wake up every day with their faces in your mind. I hope you never sleep in peace." Yolanda de Janeiro, sister of one of the deceased, hugged Crusius in court. Through tears, she told him, "You didn't know us. If you had, you would have known we are good people." Crusius sat expressionless, clad in a beige prison uniform, eyes lowered. No visible remorse. No apology. He now serves multiple life sentences at the Lewis C. Powledge Unit in Palestine, Texas. No parole. No appeal. Only memory. The Walmart massacre triggered national debates on gun reform, domestic terrorism, and white nationalist rhetoric. Walmart ceased selling assault rifle ammunition. Politicians clashed over language that fuels hate. Mexico filed terrorism charges. What began as a manifesto ended with 23 funerals and a country forced to confront the cost of online radicalization. He came to erase a culture. What he revealed instead was the resilience of a community and a justice system unwilling to look away. Number 3, Joseph Czuba. He watched cable news. He listened to talk radio. And then he picked up a knife. On October 14, 2023, Joseph Czuba, a 73-year-old Illinois landlord, committed one of the most disturbing hate crimes in recent U.S. history. It didn't happen in a war zone or a dark alley. It happened in his own home. For 2 years, Czuba had rented rooms to Hanan Shaheen and her 6-year-old son, Roddie Alfayumi, in his Plainfield Township house. Neighbors described the arrangement as peaceful. But after the Israel-Hamas war erupted in early October, Czuba became consumed with paranoia. He told his ex-wife that Shaheen needed to move and warned that her friends could come and do us harm. He spoke about a day of jihad, withdrew $1,000 from his bank, and fixated on news of the Middle East. Then, he acted. Prosecutors said Czuba first told Shaheen she had to leave. Then, without warning, he pulled a knife from his belt and attacked her, stabbing her more than a dozen times in the neck and back, trying to break her teeth, and strangling her. She managed to lock herself in the bathroom and call 911. But while she fought to survive, her 6-year-old son was still in the living room. Roddie was stabbed 26 times. Czuba left the knife in the boy's body. When police arrived, they found Czuba sitting calmly outside, blood on his hands. Inside, paramedics tried to save Roddie but were unable to revive him. His lungs had been punctured. In court, images of the crime scene were so graphic the judge turned the monitors away from the gallery. At trial, Shaheen testified that Czuba told her, "You, as a Muslim, must die." The prosecution presented surveillance footage, forensic evidence, and Czuba's own words captured on police video. "They are just like infested rats," he said. "I begged her to get out. She wouldn't." The defense argued Czuba had been frightened and misled by misinformation. They asked the jury to go beyond emotion. But the jury took less than 90 minutes to convict him on all counts: first-degree murder, attempted murder, aggravated battery, and 2 hate crimes. At sentencing, Czuba remained silent. He offered no apology, no explanation. He sat in an orange jumpsuit, blank-faced and still. Judge Amy Bertani-Tomczak handed down a 53-year sentence, effectively a life term. Roddie's great-uncle spoke for the family. "There is no sentence long enough. This was hate. This was murder." Civil rights leaders praised the outcome. The American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee called it a message: hate-fueled violence has no place here. Illinois does not have the death penalty. But Czuba will die in prison. The murder of Roddie Alfayumi did more than shake a community. It exposed how fear, propaganda, and hate can turn a neighbor into a killer. A child was murdered for his faith, and in a courtroom built for justice, that hate met its reckoning. Number 4, Gregory A. Bush. He didn't storm in. He didn't shout. He just followed, waited, and then fired. The victims never saw him coming. On October 24, 2018, Gregory Allen Bush walked into a Kroger grocery store in Jeffersontown, Kentucky. He was armed with a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson pistol. Inside, 69-year-old Maurice Stallard was shopping with his grandson. Surveillance footage showed Bush tailing Stallard through the aisle. Without hesitation, he pulled the gun from his waistband and shot Stallard in the back of the head. Then he fired again. And again. The grandson watched as his grandfather collapsed. Bush walked calmly out of the store. In the parking lot, 67-year-old Vicki Lee Jones was on the phone. Witnesses later recalled her saying, "I just want to get home. Lord, let me get home." Bush paused, looked at her, and smirked. Then he raised his weapon and shot her multiple times in the head and body. A third black man, Dominic Rozier, confronted Bush with a legally concealed firearm. Shots were exchanged, but no one was injured. Bush fled the scene and was arrested shortly after. Officers arrived within 4 minutes. What made the attack more chilling was what Bush had done moments earlier. Surveillance video revealed he had tried to enter the First Baptist Church of Jeffersontown, a predominantly black congregation. The doors were locked. Denied entry, he moved on to Kroger. His motive was unambiguous. He told a white man, "Don't shoot me, I won't shoot you. Whites don't shoot whites." He later admitted he targeted the victims because they were black. His online posts echoed similar sentiments: racial slurs, rants about black-on-black crime, and conspiracy theories. Prosecutors called it what it was, a hate crime. The Justice Department called it vicious, racially motivated violence. Bush was indicted on federal hate crime charges, as well as state charges including murder and attempted murder. He pleaded guilty but mentally ill. His schizophrenia had gone untreated. His public defender said he was haunted by voices. Yet a psychiatric evaluation found him competent to stand trial. The courtroom was silent as Bush received 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. He offered no apology. He stared ahead, blank-faced, dressed in gray prison clothes. Maurice Stallard's daughter addressed him directly, "The man whose life you took, he gave and he loved. I hope you think about what you did." In the aftermath, Kentucky lawmakers proposed expanding the state's hate crime statutes. Kroger changed its firearms policy, asking customers not to openly carry. And in Jeffersontown, a city shaken by racially charged violence, an interfaith moment of unity was declared. Gregory Bush now serves his life sentence at Luther Luckett Correctional Complex. He will die behind bars. He wanted to ignite a race war. Instead, he sparked a reckoning, one that forced a community and a country to confront the real terror of hate hiding in plain sight. Number 5, Jeremy Joseph Christian. He didn't bring a gun, just hate and a knife. And in under 12 seconds, 2 men were dead. On May 26, 2017, Jeremy Joseph Christian boarded a MAX train in Portland, Oregon. What began as shouting quickly spiraled into one of the city's deadliest hate crimes in recent history. Christian was yelling racial and anti-Muslim slurs at 2 teenage girls, Destiny Mangum, 16, and Walia Muhammad, 17. One wore a hijab. Christian told them to go back to Saudi Arabia and said Muslims should die. Ricky John Best, a 53-year-old Army veteran and father of 4, stepped in to protect the girls. Taliesin Namkimesh, 23, a recent Reed College graduate, followed. Christian responded by pulling a knife and stabbing both men in the neck. He then slashed the throat of a third man, Micah Fletcher, 21, who survived with a wound just millimeters from his carotid artery. The attack was over in less than 12 seconds. Christian fled the train as passengers screamed for help. Police arrested him minutes later near a medical center, where he tossed his folding knife at a police vehicle. In custody, he said, "I just stabbed a bunch of motherfuckers in the neck." Prosecutors said the act was fueled by white supremacist beliefs, calling it a hate crime and domestic terrorism. Christian had a history of disturbing behavior. Just one day prior, he threw a bottle at a black woman on the train. His online posts included neo-Nazi propaganda, anti-Semitic slurs, and calls for racial violence. Witnesses described his behavior as erratic and fueled by hate. During the trial, experts confirmed he had antisocial personality disorder, but he was deemed mentally competent to stand trial. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, assault, menacing, and intimidation. In February 2020, a jury found him guilty on all counts. By then, Oregon had passed a law eliminating the death penalty for aggravated murder, so Christian received 2 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus 51.5 years. During sentencing, Christian remained silent. Dressed in gray jail-issued clothing, he sat without expression. Micah Fletcher told him directly, "I hope you sit in a cell for the rest of your life. I do hope you find a way to become better than what you are today." Namkamesh's mother called her son a hero. The murders sparked vigils across Portland. Over $1 million was raised for the victims' families. Politicians, activists, and Muslim leaders condemned the violence. The mayor called the victims true heroes, and city officials urged stronger hate crime protections. The community demanded action. Christian appealed his conviction, citing procedural errors. But in June 2024, the Oregon Court of Appeals upheld the verdict in full. He remains behind bars for life. 3 men stood up to hate on a crowded train. 2 paid with their lives. But their courage proved that even in silence, decency speaks loudest. Number 6, James Harris Jackson. He didn't carry a gun. Just a sword and a mission fueled by hate. He had been planning this for over a decade. But the city he chose fought back with law, not blood. On March 20, 2017, James Harris Jackson, a 28-year-old white supremacist from Baltimore, traveled to New York City with chilling resolve. He sought practice in violence against black men, carrying with him a 26-inch sword. His target, 66-year-old Timothy Kaufman, who spent his evening collecting bottles near a Manhattan subway station. Jackson spotted Kaufman outside a police station and attacked him from behind, plunging the sword repeatedly into Kaufman's back and chest. The victim staggered into the 30th precinct, bleeding profusely, before collapsing inside. Jackson remained calm, folding 3 unused knives in his backpack before walking into the station to turn himself in. The killing was brutal. Jackson later described it as an amateurish, slipshod version of a terrorist attack. Kaufman died hours later at Bellevue Hospital. Jackson confessed to police that his act was racially driven, saying, "The racial world war starts today. This political terrorist attack is a formal declaration of a global total war on the Negro races." He admitted he chose New York because it was the media capital of the world, and he planned more attacks to ignite a race war and stop interracial relationships he deemed unacceptable. Authorities charged Jackson with first- and second-degree murder as an act of terrorism, second-degree murder as a hate crime, and criminal weapon possession. He pled guilty in January 2019. In February, he was handed life without parole at New York's Supreme Court. During sentencing, Jackson stood expressionless in olive prison garb, his hands folded loosely behind his back. He offered no apology, no explanation, just a blank stare fixed on nothing. He stared ahead, resigned, unrepentant, while the judge acknowledged the gravity of an ideologically motivated murder meant to terrorize minority communities. Timothy Kaufman's family mourned. His cousin pointedly said, "The sick irony that someone obviously diseased of mind could commit a hate crime against someone so loving." At the funeral, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio called it more than a murder. It's an assault on what makes this the greatest city in the world, our inclusiveness and diversity. The mayor urged all New Yorkers to reject hate and embrace unity. Jackson's confession, courtroom demeanor, and social media footprint marked by white nationalist and neo-Nazi material painted a portrait of a radicalized killer, not a troubled loner. Mental health arguments were raised, but Jackson was deemed fit to stand trial. His knowledge of conspiracy theories like white genocide, his manifesto, and his calm assertion of political motive stripped any pretense of insanity. The case triggered legal shifts. Jackson became the first person in New York to be convicted under its newly enforced hate crime terrorism statutes, reflecting a more assertive legal stance on ideologically driven violence. Civil rights groups praised the outcome as a step toward accountability in terror acts born of racism. One man's life ended in a single brutal act. One killer hoped to start a war. What he left behind was proof that hate, once uncovered, demands accountability. Number 7, Kori Ali Muhammad. He didn't wait for headlines. He made his own 4 dead in 5 minutes, and not a single doubt why. The targets were chosen. The motive was clear. Race. On two separate days in April 2017, Kori Ali Muhammad, a self-proclaimed black supremacist formerly known as Corey Allen Taylor, carried out one of the most overtly racist shooting sprees in recent California history. His first victim, Carl Williams, a 25-year-old white security guard, was gunned down outside a Motel 6 in Fresno. Muhammad later said he killed him because he was enforcing motel policy. But the real reason, he told police, was race. 5 days later, Muhammad returned to the streets of Fresno armed with a revolver and a plan. He had learned he was wanted for Williams' murder and decided, in his own words, if I'm going down for one, I might as well take out as many white men as I can. Within 4 minutes, he had fatally shot 3 more men, Zachary Randalls, Mark Gassett, and David Jackson. All of them were white. All of them were strangers. He spared a Hispanic driver and a Latina woman with a child, confirming he had come hunting by race. Witnesses described Muhammad shouting racial slurs and obscenities as he opened fire. He reloaded at a bus stop mid-spree and chased down Jackson, his oldest and heaviest target, into a parking lot, where he fired 6 times. Muhammad later said he shot Gassett a second time to make sure he was dead, comparing the killing to how COVID-19 was killing white men. Police arrested him just 4 minutes after the spree began, tipped off by Fresno's ShotSpotter gunfire detection system. As he was cuffed, Muhammad smiled and shouted Allahu Akbar. He later confessed, stating flatly, "I did it. I shot them." Investigators quickly ruled out terrorism and labeled the shootings a racially motivated hate crime. Fresno Police Chief Jerry Dyer said the motive was solely based on race. Muhammad had a long history of untreated mental illness, including psychosis and auditory hallucinations. He had previously been found incompetent in federal court and committed for evaluation. His social media was littered with extremist views tied to the Nation of Islam and conspiracies about white devils and black genocide. But the jury found him sane enough to stand trial and guilty on all counts, for murders, for attempted murders, and weapons charges. He received life in prison without the possibility of parole. At sentencing, he blew kisses to the victims' families. He laughed while recounting the killings. Expressionless in a beige prison jumpsuit, he stared ahead, eyes cold, posture unrepentant. Muhammad remained defiant to the end. The case sparked outrage, not only for its violence but for how openly hate-fueled it was. Civil rights experts called it a wake-up call for race-based extremism. Law enforcement renewed efforts to track ideology-driven crimes. Kori Ali Muhammad wanted a race war. What he got instead was a lifetime behind bars and a justice system that called his crime by its name. Number 8. Payton S. Gendron. He didn't lurk in darkness. He chose a grocery store at its busiest hour, armed with hate, a rifle, and a camera. Intentional. Calculated. Chilling. The target was race and the plan was slaughter. On May 14, 2022, 18-year-old Payton S. Gendron drove over 200 miles from Conklin, New York, to Buffalo. For months, he had planned this act of domestic terrorism. His goal, to kill as many black people as possible. He had visited the Tops Friendly Market several times beforehand, sketching layouts, monitoring peak hours, and studying racial demographics. He posted a 180-page manifesto online, detailing his motives rooted in white supremacy and the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. He live-streamed the attack using a head-mounted camera on Twitch. At 2:15 p.m., Gendron opened fire in the parking lot, killing 3. He then stormed inside, shouting racial slurs, targeting only black shoppers. 1 white man crossed his path. Gendron apologized and walked past. 10 of the 13 people shot were killed, all of them black. 3 others were wounded. Among the dead, 86-year-old Ruth Whitfield, 55-year-old retired police officer Aaron Salter Jr., and 77-year-old substitute teacher Pearl Young. Salter fired back at the gunman, but Gendron's military-grade body armor rendered his defense ineffective. The method was premeditated, the motive overt. Gendron's diary detailed months of planning, including how he chose the location to maximize black casualties. He had considered other sites, including malls and churches, before settling on the Buffalo zip code with the highest concentration of African Americans. He used illegal high-capacity magazines bought in Pennsylvania, and his rifle was covered in racist graffiti and white nationalist symbols. Police arrived just 4 minutes after the shooting began. Gendron aimed his weapon at his own neck before officers talked him down. He was arrested on the spot and later confessed, "I did it. I shot them." Authorities charged him with 1 count of domestic terrorism motivated by hate, New York's first use of this law, 10 counts of first-degree murder, and multiple attempted murder and weapons charges. In November 2022, Gendron pleaded guilty. On February 15, 2023, he was sentenced to 11 concurrent life terms without parole, plus 90 years. In court, he stood motionless in an olive green prison uniform, expressionless, cold, unrepentant. Federal prosecutors have since filed 27 additional charges, including hate crimes and firearms offenses. In January 2024, the Department of Justice announced it would seek the death penalty. His federal trial is scheduled for 2026. The massacre forced a national reckoning on gun laws, online radicalization, and white supremacist extremism. New York passed legislation banning military-style body armor and restricting youth access to firearms. Families of the victims offered emotional testimony, some demanding he suffer for life, others insisting death was too easy. "He should be haunted every night," said one. Payton Gendron set out to massacre a community. What he sparked instead was a movement and a reminder that when hate becomes action, justice must be louder than silence. Number 9. Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, William Roddie Bryan. He wasn't breaking the law, he was jogging. But for 3 armed white men in Georgia, that alone was enough to justify a deadly pursuit. On February 23, 2020, Ahmaud Arbery, a 25-year-old black man, was jogging through a suburban neighborhood near Brunswick when he was confronted by Travis McMichael, his father Gregory McMichael, and neighbor William Roddie Bryan Jr. Believing Arbery matched a burglary suspect with no evidence, the McMichaels armed themselves and pursued him in a pickup truck. Bryan followed in his own vehicle, filming with his cell phone. For nearly 5 minutes, the men boxed Arbery in. At one point, Gregory told police they had Arbery trapped like a rat. When Arbery attempted to run past the truck, Travis exited, shotgun in hand. A struggle followed. Within seconds, Travis fired 3 shots. Arbery collapsed in the street and died on the scene. He was unarmed. The video, later released by Bryan, sparked national outrage. It showed Arbery running, cornered, then gunned down. Gregory stood armed on the truck bed. Bryan filmed from behind, never intervening. Despite the clear footage, no arrests were made for over 2 months. Only after public pressure, viral protests, and state intervention did charges follow. In November 2021, all 3 men were convicted in state court. Travis was found guilty of malice murder and 8 other counts. Gregory and Bryan were found guilty of felony murder and other charges. In February 2022, a federal jury found them guilty of hate crimes, confirming they had targeted Arbery because of his race. Prosecutors presented messages from Travis and Bryan laced with racist slurs. One prosecutor stated plainly, Ahmaud Arbery died because he was black. The judge noted the killing was callous and driven by a desire for confrontation. Travis and Gregory received life without parole. Bryan received life with the possibility of parole after 30 years. At sentencing, Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, told the court, "I feel every shot that was fired, every day." His father said Travis deserved to rot in prison. Civil rights groups called the verdict a turning point, reinforcing that racial vigilante violence has legal consequences. The defendants requested placement in federal custody, citing safety and health concerns. The judge denied it. "They are now the property of Georgia's Department of Corrections," she said. The case led to legal change. Georgia repealed its Civil War-era citizens arrest law. It also fueled national protests alongside the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, marking a critical point in America's reckoning with racial violence. The 3 men are now appealing their convictions. But for many, the message is clear: what began as a driveway decision ended in a hate crime, and no claim of citizens arrest can justify racial execution. The Ahmaud Arbery case explained not only a crime, but a reckoning - one that redefined how Georgia, and the nation, confronts hate-motivated violence. This was more than a Georgia hate crime trial. It was the final word on vigilante murder sentencing in modern America. Ahmaud Arbery's death revealed more than injustice. It forced the country to ask, who gets the benefit of the doubt and who gets chased down for running? Number 10. Robert Gregory Bowers. He didn't yell. He didn't hesitate. He entered a house of worship with quiet intent, armed, radicalized, and certain that his war on Jewish life would start that morning. On October 27, 2018, at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Robert Gregory Bowers opened fire during Shabbat services. Armed with an AR-15 style rifle and 3 Glock .357 pistols, he killed 11 people and wounded 6, including 5 police officers. It remains the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in U.S. history. Bowers, then 46, targeted 3 congregations worshiping in the same building. He moved methodically, firing 92 rounds, reloading at least twice, and stepping over bodies to search for more victims. Survivors described him shooting up close and personal. Melvin Wax, 87, was executed point blank. Rose Mallinger, 97, was the oldest victim. Cecil and David Rosenthal, 2 brothers with disabilities, were among the first shot. His motive was clear. Online, Bowers had posted, "All Jews must die." He subscribed to the Great Replacement theory, a white supremacist conspiracy claiming Jews orchestrated non-white immigration to exterminate white Americans. Just before the massacre, he wrote on Gab, "HIAS likes to bring invaders and that kill our people. I'm going in." He had planned it for months. Investigators found that Bowers had configured his computer to delete files after a 200-minute countdown. During the assault, he called 911 and told dispatchers, "They're committing genocide to my people. I just want to kill Jews." When police stormed the building, Bowers opened fire again. He was shot multiple times before surrendering. In custody, he showed no remorse. He told one officer he wished he'd killed more. In court, his defense didn't dispute guilt. Instead, they argued he suffered from schizophrenia and delusional thinking rooted in childhood trauma. At age 13, he had once tried to set his mother on fire. But prosecutors countered that his beliefs were not delusions, they were hate. A jury agreed. On August 3, 2023, Bowers was sentenced to death on 22 capital counts. Expressionless in a drab gray uniform, Robert Bowers sat rigid, his jaw clenched and eyes blank, no flicker of regret as the sentence was read aloud. Behind him, rows of grieving relatives stared silently, waiting for closure that never came. Today, Robert Bowers remains on federal death row at USP Terre Haute in Indiana. His appeal was denied in 2024. President Biden excluded him from clemency, citing the scale and motive of the attack. Though executions are rare, Bowers is one of the few prisoners whose death sentence remains active under the current administration. The Tree of Life Synagogue mass shooting became a national flashpoint for anti-Semitic extremism. As the Robert Bowers hate crime case explained, this wasn't just mass murder, it was ideology weaponized. He walked in to destroy a faith. But in the end, all he did was ensure his name would be remembered, not for power, but as proof that hate, even calculated, ends in judgment. These weren't just crimes, they were confessions of hate, written in blood, captured on camera, and sealed in courtrooms. But justice didn't flinch. And neither should we. If you believe the truth should never be buried and every victim deserves their story told, then subscribe to Justice Reversed and tap the bell. We expose the real faces behind America's darkest crimes and the system that fought back. The next case? It could be even more chilling. A name you've never heard. A verdict you'll never forget. Because on this channel, justice isn't just a word, it's what we watch unfold. Hit that subscribe button and join the reckoning.